Whoa, that was pretty cool. How do people do that? Or how about this one? Or how about, I don't know, morphing animals into each other? Hey everyone, Gary Simon of Coursetro. So today we're going to take a look at designing a custom SVG icon and then importing it into a 100% free web-based tool called ShapeShifter.design, which is the actual URL, which will allow us to animate it and export it as an SVG that we can then use in HTML and CSS to control the animation and determine when it starts and plays and all of that cool stuff. All right, so make sure you subscribe here if you haven't yet on the YouTube channel, and also check out Coursetro.com. Let's get started. All right, so to get started, you want to visit ShapeShifter.design, and the very first thing you need is to actually import something. So you do that under import and then vector drawable or SVG. We're going to use SVG, and that means we're going to have to use a design app of some sort, something that's capable of SVG vector graphics. So I'm just going to use Adobe Illustrator, though you could use anything else that gives you a pen tool and allows you to export SVG files. And so just to get an idea of what we want to do, something that could be helpful is to check out material.io/icons. And you could do a search here for a specific icon if you want, like, I don't know, chat or something like that. Or you could just browse these for, a million different ideas. And so my idea was to take this, something very similar to this chat bubble outline, and kind of go from this to this and then to this. All right, so I showed you at the beginning of this video the one that we were doing, and so just to demonstrate this again, that's what we want to achieve. So I'm not going to actually use these because these aren't actual strokes. These are kind of paths that have already been expanded, and so you wouldn't want to use those if you're trying to achieve this particular effect. So what we want to do is I'm going to open up Illustrator. And by the way, before we get there, just to show you real quickly, get back here. This is based on 24 by 24 pixel grid. Okay, so we're going to set our document up to match that. So we have pixels selected here. So this is going to be 24 by 24. All right. Okay, so let's toggle our layers right here. All right, so the first thing I'll do is to create just the rounded rectangle. If we just left click once, we can just choose something like 20 by 20. Quarter radius, we can change that as needed. Obviously 12 is way too much. So I'm going out here to around 2. And we're gonna move this into place. All right, and then we're going to drag this up just a bit, and then we're just going to modify this to have this little kind of triangle section down here. So I'm going to zoom up here. And by the way, this is only a 1-point fill. We're going to make it 2. There we go. And now we could see with the direct selection tool selected here, we have our 2 anchor points. We're going to need to add another one. And sometimes this is a matter of just playing around with things to get the desired look. So pen tool, I'm going to put one right here to add an anchor point. And then I'm going to take the direct selection tool, select both of these, hold shift and go down. All right, maybe right around there. And then I'm going to take this one and just delete it. Bring this down, holding shift, and then take the pen tool and then hover over this one right here and left click, and then we'll combine those and we'll push this over with the direct selection tool. So just take only this anchor point, hold shift, move it over, and we'll select everything. These bottom 4 anchor points, use the keyboard up arrow key and make sure it sits in there nicely. Yeah, right around there. Actually, I want to go a little bit higher. All right, so we're at 20 by 18. I might want to get this in a little bit. We'll make it 18 here by 16. That way we have a lot of padding and room to work with here. All right, so that looks good to me. And this is going to be the starting point for us. And it's going to be the first SVG file that we import into ShapeShifter. So if you go to File, Save As, you save it somewhere. We'll call this one, we'll just call this outline chat. And then we'll save as SVG right here. So we hit Save. And this little blip will come up. And make your settings match here. And then just hit OK. All right, so now we'll go back to ShapeShifter. We'll go to File, and Import, SVG, and we're going to go to File, Outline, -chat. There it is, perfectly set in and ready to rock. All right, so we can notice that we have a timeline down here. We kind of have an area where we have our layers, and you can group things up, and you can create clipping masks and all that stuff we'll get to shortly. And then properties are over here, based on what you select in the timeline. And that's pretty much it for the most part, although there are some other sections that we'll take a look at. So you can notice we can select this actual, the outline here, and it gives us all the data that's associated with it, like the path data. It gives you the fill color. You can change all this stuff, by the way. And that's what's really cool. It allows you to animate a lot of different of these properties. And actually, if you click on this, animate this layer, then these are everything. These are all the properties that you can actually animate. So like trim path end and start. For instance, if we put this to 0, well, it's no longer there. It's invisible. And that's how you can begin to animate some of these things. So for instance, I'll just show you. If we click on our path, and we animate the trim path end, and we put from value 0 to value 1. And by the way, this is your timeline. You could drag this, and you can see how it affects, it shows the end time. So you can just put that, you can specify it here or just drag it over here. But if we hit play, look at that. Let me just deselect that. Now you can notice it's really fast. It's probably showing up a little bit jagged because I'm not using a high FPS for this video, but it says animation is 300 milliseconds. If you click on that, you can change that right here. So we'll change it to 1 second. But just note, the longer the animation is, also based on whether or not you're going to use the 30 FPS version or the 60, which we'll get to later, it will increase the file size quite a bit. So let's see here. We're back here. And this is currently 279 milliseconds. You know, if you want to change that to half a second, you'll see that it'll go a little bit slower. But that looks slick already. So you can create these kind of cool outlines, you know, obviously very easily and fast. But we're not going to do that. So just delete one. We just select down here in the timeline, just delete it, go back to our path, and change this back to 1. And we're right back where we started when we imported it. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to go from this to this, and we can kind of, you could do it a lot of ways, really, but we're going to basically create kind of like a wave effect that rises, and this is based on one of their demos that they had. If you go to File, Demo, and then choose the Heartbreak one, I think it was called, you'll see, basically we're going to do the same thing. So it's going to kind of fill up all the way. So how would we do that? Well, let's go back to Illustrator, and I'm going to take our pen tool, and I'm going to just click right around here and left click and drag out a Bezier and to right there. And then I'm just going to come down. It doesn't really matter exactly where I'm at yet, but I'm just holding shift and I'm connecting everything up. Now this one will not have a stroke, so we're just going to hit 0 there, and then it's going to have a black fill. All right, so the starting point of this animation is actually going to be outside of the chat blip. All right, and it's going to, we'll just say it's down here. Actually, we'll squash it further. All right, so it's going to be real small like that. Now, if we go back to our layers, and you go to Window Layers, by the way, and we come over here, what I want to do now is just delete this, the original path, and then I'm going to go to File, Save As, and for now, I'm just going to make it anything because I'm not actually going to save this. Actually, yes, I am. We're just going to call this fill, and I'm going to hit save. And by the way, notice this SVG code. If we click this, it will pop up a text editor here where it shows you the code associated with this. So the important part right here is this right here, this path D equals, and these are all of the coordinates that really make up the shape. So we're going to be referring to this in a second. So just note that and save this. So now we can go back and we're going to import an SVG and then our fill. Looks like crap, doesn't it? So that's expected though. What we want to do now is import a path here, the same path from before, so our outline chat, and we're going to, by the way, it's called, by the way, can I rename this? Well, probably can. I'm just being slow at the moment. File, yeah. What we can do is up here for this path 2, which is this one right here, the copy, we click on this more options there and then convert to clip path. All right, so now anything after it will only show up in this area. All right, so now what we can do is we can animate this right here to grow essentially, and we can change the path data property. So what we'll do is take this little icon right there and we'll choose path data. So you're going to go from a from value, we can see the whole thing right there, from here, which is the initial, to something else. So how do we change that? Well, we'll go back to our Adobe Illustrator, back up here, Control Z, and then I'm just going to drag this up, up to here above, just so that it will fully cover everything. All right, so now we can delete this file, we'll save as, we'll overwrite it, it doesn't matter. But we're not actually going to save it. Just hit yes here, and then we can get our SVG code, copy the path D property, get out of there and hit cancel. And we just back up a few times here. And then go back and then paste this in here. All right, so it looks a little bit silly right now, but if we, let's find our path data, where are we at here? Oh, okay, it's not showing up, it's showing up all the way over here. There you go. If that happens, just use, if you're using Chrome, hit Control and your scroll wheel to change the zoom settings so you can see everything. This needs to be at the beginning. So we're going to drag that. So now we hit play. Now let's look at it without that selected. All right. And that's how you would do that. Okay. So let's make that a little bit further. All right, cool. So now let's do the actual lines, and just to simulate what that, I'm going to go ahead and just, yeah, we can hide that. And then for the lines, let's go ahead and fill this with a black so that we can actually see what's happening. All right, stroke, we can just, we don't even need that. Now for the lines, we'll go ahead and use the line tool, just coming out from the very left, holding shift, and we'll make our first line, yeah, something right around there. make it a 2-point fill of white. Oops, not a fill. We don't want a fill. All right, so this needs to be white. Okay. And you just want to get it set up. You can use the direct selection tool to take the anchor points and position it where you want it to be. And then once you have that done, we can go ahead and duplicate that. So Control-C, Control-F, move it down with your keyboard arrow keys. And we'll take the direct selection tool, move this in with our keyboard arrow keys. Maybe 1, 2, yeah, just twice. And then replicate that process one more time. Control-C, Control-F, move it down. Now this is too much distance between these, so I'm only going to make it 1. So move this up 1 and then this up 1. Take our, there we go. All right, so now we're going to go ahead to our layers here, and I'm going to delete this one here and as well as this one. And I'm also going to just temporarily delete the very bottom and middle, and I'm going to save this. All right, so Control Shift and S to save, and we're going to call this here line 1. And the reason I deleted those is because in the SVG code it will include that stuff which you just don't need. So we'll save that, and then we'll back up, and then just back up twice. The other ones that I want to delete. So the first one that I kept would be this one. So we can delete that, delete this, and this will give us the middle one. So I'll save that as line 2. And then we'll back up and then delete these 2. There may be a better way. If there's a better way of doing this, let me know in the comments. All right, so now we have everything. We just back up to get everything that we started out with, rather. And then now we can import those 3 files. So if we import SVG, line 1, 2, and 3. All right, so right now they're hidden because it's showing up after the clip that we have. So if I select them, you'll see that I accidentally exported the wrong one. So I'm just going to go back and fix that real quick. This is the one that we want. So I'll go ahead and just delete all this. This one that's hidden. All right, so this is actually line 3. Yep. And save. Sorry about that. Import line 3. All right, so now we select these. There we go. All right, so I'm going to take these here and I'm going to move them up here. Each one needs moved separately, apparently. All right, so now they're going to show up over. And if I scroll out here just a bit, what we want to do rather is take our path right here, or our clip, and this shape, and let's hit Control-G to group those. So now I believe we can take all those 3, and then it won't be affected by that path. I thought you had to move it up, but if you just group them up, there we go. But we don't want these right here, right? So we don't want these to be to show up at the very beginning. Instead, what we can do is animate the trim path end portion right here. So we'll take each 3 of these. So the first one here, let's move this up. So this is the first, second, and third. So path 3, we're going to take that, and path end will be 0. This one as well would be 0, and then this one will be 0 as well. Okay, and then the point at which we want them to show up, which is right around perhaps right here, we'll take this first one. We're going to animate the trim path end from 0 to 1. All right, we'll pull this out a bit. So there we go. So if we hit play, cool. That's pretty good to me. And we'll do the same thing. So we'll take this one for path 4, trim path end, 0 to 1, drag this over here, and you could stagger the animation if you want. All right, and then finally, same thing for the last one. All right, so we'll drag this over. Yeah, might as well take each one of these and drag them out a little bit more. All right, so let's hit play. Awesome. So now what we can do is export it. So if you go to export, and by the way, you can save these and they're custom files for ShapeShifter. So you can save them to your computer and edit them whenever you want later on. And now we can just export these as either just SVG, vector drawable, animated vector drawable, and these are some of these are specific to actual mobile apps formats. But SVG sprite sheet will actually export an HTML and CSS file with animation along with a SVG file that will contain all of the frames essentially. So if we do that, it'll download a zip automatically. And if we open that up, it's off screen. Let me drag this over here for a second. All right, you'll see we have a 30 FPS version and a 60. So obviously the 60 would be smoother but larger in file size. If you see 89 KB, there may be a way to drastically reduce that, by the way. So I would look into that. And then what we can do is just double click on the HTML and we can see it right here. So now you can see by default it doesn't stay there, but that's based on CSS properties that you can actually modify yourself. So let's do that real quickly. I'm going to take those 3 files that are inside of the zip file that just downloaded them and then put them into a new folder. All right, it just pasted them here in a new folder right here that I will open up in a code editor. And here we are. All right, so I'm using Visual Studio Code, by the way. If we check out the HTML, all this is just a div with a class of ShapeShifter and play and a background image set to the SVG. All right, so the SVG file, of course, is massive. So you definitely want to take into consideration when you're creating these, and if there's something, if you're working with a project where speed is important. So what really makes this tick, though, is this sprite, the CSS file, basically. So it's very simple. We have an animation up here called Play 60, and it basically just changes the background position on this play right here. So this play class simply adds the animation name, which is what makes the animation play. So if you wanted to make this something clickable, or you wanted to be able to control when the animation begins based on JavaScript or some event, then you could do that, of course, with JavaScript. So just to show you how that would be done real quickly, we can go to our HTML and hit Control B to get rid of that sidebar. And we'll come down here after the div and we'll put in script. And we'll just use vanilla JavaScript for this, just basic plain JavaScript. Get element by ID, and we're going to give it an ID called button, and then add event listener on click function. All right. Inside of here, we'll simply say this.class list, and we're going to add a class called play. So that means by default, we're going to remove this from the class and then also give an ID of button. All right, so we'll save that. I'm not done yet. Let's go to our CSS file and let's just add a couple rule sets here. Padding top 30 pixels. Let's see here. I want to get this centered up for us. margin auto. And also, let's make it so that it doesn't reset the animation. So animation fill mode will be forwards. And that makes it so that the animation, once it gets to the last frame, it won't reset itself. All right, and so let's make cursor pointer as well. All right, and I think that would be good. So now, if I just right click and reveal an Explorer and double click on it, and also zoom up my browser so we can see this much more, it's like 500%. We'll click on it, and there we go. Awesome stuff. So really, I've only just scratched the surface of this ShapeShifter tool. There are other possibilities that where you can actually modify the shapes, and it'll morph from two different shapes themselves. And that's something that we'll take a look at in another lesson. All right, so hopefully you found that useful, and if there are areas that I could have improved, let me know in the comments, but otherwise give it a like and make sure you subscribe, and I will see you guys soon. All right, bye.